Okay, we are at the old, what's known as the Simpson place here in Waverly Hall. And this was originally the home of William Whitehead. Now, we've spoke a lot about William Whitehead in past videos. William and his brother Thomas were two of the very first settlers that came here in the 1820s, late, I'd say 1826 or so. This is where William settled. He drew this land in the land lottery of 1825 because he had, I believe, served in the War of 1812, if I'm not mistaken. Originally with this place, there was well over, I think, 1,500, 2,000 acres. When it was in full cultivation, all out here, all the way to the Mulberry Creek below here was planted in cotton and other crops. But when the Harris County Courthouse was built in Hamilton in 1908, the current courthouse, it originally had a dome. And I was always told that you could see the dome of that courthouse from the front porch of this house here, looking across the fields. That's how much cultivation there was in Harris County the year 1908. Of course, by then, this was owned by the Simpson family. The Whiteheads were gone from here and relocated into town.
Dan, I already see something that's caught my eye here. This block.
You know what that was? It was where you got on and off of a horse.
Oh, wow.
Yep, that was probably a proper name for it.
The horse mounting stone.
Horse mounting stone. And that would have been out here near the front so that they could mount and dismount. There was another one built into a wall up here, but I think it fell years ago. We'll see, because this is the front yard of the old home. You can see the magnolia tree. And I also want to stress that this was owned by William Whitehead. After the war and after his death, the estate sold this plantation to Wilkerson Sparks. Wilkerson Sparks didn't live here too many years. He passed away, and then it was sold to the Robert Simpson family. Now, the Robert Simpson family owns it to this day, and we have special permission to be here on this property to document this. This is private property, so we have just this one chance to video this, and that's it. Wild beds.
Bulb flowers all through this yard. And look at this great magnolia tree. That is probably one of the biggest I've seen. There's another large tree behind it, and a cedar tree right here. These big trees are amazing.
The house that was here was built in 1836. Of course, they had lived here since 1826, 26. And they had lived in log cabins or whatever they could construct to, you know, temporary shelter. But by 1835, 36, Mr. Whitehead had become very prosperous, and he was able to construct a big two-story home here that was just magnificent. And he had all the mantles imported from England. They were brought to Charleston, and then they were brought down to Macon, and he went to Macon, they say, and got the mantles and brought them here by wagon. Well, the house was vacant. The Simpson family passed away, and it was inherited down to their granddaughter, and she lived in Atlanta. And this was in the 1960s when the Civil War Centennial was taking place, and there was a lot of celebrations going on in Columbus to that effect. And they say that a lot of college kids came out here and would use this house as a party place because it was vacant, and they would wear their Confederate uniforms out here, and they would have bonfires and different things. And in 1963, I remember my daddy said that he had been down here with the owner of the house, and she had shown him different things about it, different features that was really unique. But he said that at that time, the mantles, the windows, everything had been stolen, and it just made her sick. And she had an idea of who stole a lot of the things out of there, and she identified a few things around town. She pointed those windows out on different houses around Waverly Hall and said, "Look, there's the window out of the dining room, and there's the window out of the living room," because some of the windows were unique in that they were 4 panes across instead of the regular 3 panes. These were 4 panes. In other words, I think they were 12 over 12 in some of these windows, window sash. But anyway, the house burned down in 1963. And of course, there was no electricity to it. It was never known how it burned. It just burned. And it drew crowds from everywhere because there was no fire department at that time. And all you could do is just watch it burn. So everybody came down to watch the old Whitehead Simpson house burn. And it was really sad to a lot of people. But let's go up and look at what's left. Come over this way, you see the steps.
I see them. That is so cool.
Are there any photographs of that house?
Yes, I have it. So I've got to say, Dan has told me about this place for quite a while, and this has been something that we have been hoping to get the chance to come and look at. And I remember you described it to me as the terraced front yard, which is absolutely beautiful. And I mean, the steps over there and this terraced wall, that is amazing.
And there was a circular drive originally that came off the road and circled right up through here to those steps. You can see the old road bed here. And then it circled back out to the road around that way. It forked right down here, and it went back to the barns and all of the what they call the slave quarters. Later that was tenant houses, and all the dependency buildings were back in the back. But this used to be a beautiful site here with all these bulb flowers. You can see they're actually still coming out of the ground. It being this close to spring. But one thing that was always unique was the mounting stone here. That's the wisteria, Robert. This is where the horses would ride up, or they would pull a buggy up close, and this is where the ladies would step out right here onto this rock. You see it comes out from that terrace. This was originally the top. See, it sticks out further than the rest of the wall. It's fallen down over the years, but I remember my daddy telling me that Mrs. Galbraith told him that that was what that was for, and that her grandmother as a little girl used to get on and off of the buggy here. But these are the steps going up to the first level. You've got another terrace here with a rock wall. Now, years ago, this wall had a picket fence on it. I remember the pickets still being here. And a picket fence, and there was a gate here, and the front yard was enclosed. And it was all flower gardens. And you can see the flower gardens, flower beds are still outlined in rock.
And you can still see the path going up to the house. That's really good.
Makes you wonder what special was growing in that little circle right there. There was one there and I mentioned one over here. Maybe a favorite rose bush or a boxwood. Like I said, people used to come here and dig up whatever they wanted and steal it and take it away. But one thing they never did eradicate was the bulb flowers. They're everywhere. Now the front door steps to the house, to the front porch would have been right here. And this would have been the front porch. Now the house originally had a front porch that came out and had columns that held up the front portico that was up above here, and there was a balcony up here on the second floor. But later the porch was added onto and it went down to the sides of the house, ends of the house on the front. And then they had side porches on each side of the house. But unlike a lot of the early settlement houses, you can tell how far apart these chimneys are, so you can imagine the hallway and the two big rooms on either side. And it's my understanding that you went down the hall and came up the stairs from the back and then onto a landing and then went up the stairs again. And at the top of the stairs, there was a window that looked out over the backyard. Excuse me, at the top of the stairs there was a balcony. The front of the house and the back of the house were identical. They always said that Mr. Simpson could see his farm all the way to the Mulberry Creek from the back of the house, and he could see all the way to the McCullough's place on the front of his house.
Were there two chimneys?
Yes, this would have been the chimney in the room on this side of the house, and that would have been the chimney in maybe the bedroom or the parlor. Then there were two rooms back here that had a chimney on each end.
So the house had four chimneys?
Four chimneys, yes. And of course it was two-story and had fireplaces upstairs as well, so these chimneys were two-story in height. That well.
I was going to ask if that was a well right behind the house.
That is the well. That was the well that was on the back porch. And supposedly it was filled in, but it looks like it's washed in over the years. But I can remember when people used to drive down here and dump their garbage into that old well.
That explains all of the newer trash around up here.
This was the town dump for a long time. Now there was a porch between the well and the kitchen. The kitchen was back here. You see some of the foundation of the kitchen. The kitchen came all the way back here on this side. Now, there's a mound of dirt over there where there was a barn.
Now, when we looked at Colonel Blackman's old plantation house, and we noticed the handmade or local made bricks that were there, were these bricks made around here on the Whitehead Plantation?
I would say these bricks were made here. When Mr. Whitehead wrote his last will and testament, he included the names and occupations of a lot of his slaves. His last will and testament was written before the Civil War occurred. Mr. Whitehead lived until after the Civil War, but he never wrote a new will. So they had to probate his old will when he died in 1874, I believe. Well, upon his death and they probated that will, all of that was recorded in the Harris County courthouse. So I believe that in his will there is certain named individuals, such as it would name the slave's name and his occupation. Brick mason is one of those slaves. I believe it lists blacksmiths, it lists carpenters. It goes into great detail. It's a very, very valuable historical document. And fortunately, they used it instead of just saying he had no will. They did use that will, although they couldn't, none of those assets were still available, as seen by the courts, of course, because freedom had taken place and had eradicated all of that as property. So his estate was a very, very touchy situation because he had a son who owned a plantation, and his son had preceded him in death, and his son was named in the will. So there was a big court battle over how the estate was divided. It got really nasty between members of the family after Mr. William Whitehead passed away, and it was something that was tied up in the courts for a long time. But eventually his estate was settled, and this was sold to Wilkerson Sparks. I'll show you this. That's one of the lightning rods from the house. The lightning rod would have came down attached to this, and this went in the ground somewhere. That's the cable that went up to it. There's another end to it right there. You see these would screw together. Look at there, it still turns.
When does something like that date to?
Lightning rods were very popular from the 1870s on up. I would say anywhere between 1880 and 1920. The big thing was lightning rod salesmen. You've probably heard of lightning rod salesmen were quite a inconvenience back in those days.
Look at this plaster or mortar on the back. Is it painted?
I believe it was painted white, whitewashed. These chimneys were very, very well kept in their day. Very well maintained.
And then these would be the bricks that were made on this land. Dan, were both of these chimneys, were they fieldstone on the bottom and brick on top?
I don't know. This one on the front was most definitely brick, because these rooms up here would have been the parlor or the master bedroom, and they would have been considered much nicer, so they would have had brickwork on them. You can't tell because the foundation is covered up, but I believe they were brick all the way up.
Gotcha. I see less brick on this one, but I see more brick on the one across from it, so I guess the way that one fell, it just didn't cover it up.
I guess so. This is the flower pit, or storm pit. I guess it depended on what it was needed for. But after the storm of 1875, every home in this part of the country had a storm pit dug. But this one, I believe, was probably used because the Simpson family was known for their flowers. As a matter of fact, that's how they made a living later after cotton was no longer king, after the boll weevil. The Simpson family raised fig trees, and they would divide up little fig trees into pots, and they would take them up and ship them on the train from Waverly Hall, and they sold them through mail order to different, all over the country. But Mrs. Simpson was known for her flowers, selling bulbs of all kind of different flowers, irises and different things. But main thing they were known for was the sale of fig slips, as they were called, fig sprouts. I'm sorry, fig sprouts. They also, she was, they sold milk and buttermilk and eggs, and they were very well known for that.
A lot of the old plantation houses I've seen don't have cellars underneath, and whereas you see a lot of houses up north that have a cellar hole. So would this have been in place of something like that?
Yes, cellars were not that common around here. There were a few of the old homes that had it just for keeping things like potatoes, sweet potatoes. They had to have a place to keep those. But storm cellars really gained in popularity after the storm of 1875. When so many people around here lost their homes and one whole family was wiped out, the Kennan family. But this one looks like it might have had a concrete lid around it at one time. I mean a concrete base with a wooden top. Go down. I'm just looking at your foot. It looked like quicksand, doesn't it? He's braver than I am.
This is a root cellar, is it?
Yes.
Waverly Hall trash.
Yeah.
Hey Dan, look at this chimney here. This one is brick all the way down to the base.
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
Bricks made right here.
And this would have been, you said there were side
There
porches?
was a side porch right here. And back in the days of the plantation, any business with the head of the farm was taken up on the side porch. If you came here and you had business, you came to the side door. And it didn't matter who you were. If you were the governor, if you came here, you came to the side door if you had business. But if you came here socially, you came to the front door if you were invited or if it was a social call. But that was just plantation society etiquette. And all the big homes like this one had a side entrance that went into the master bedroom, which would have been Mr. Whitehead's room on this side of the house. More light and light. this is some more of the cable that ran from the lightning rod down to the ground. See, it still has the insulator on it. One of the insulators.
Now, Dan, this was the Whitehead Plantation, and Samantha Street was born on the Whitehead Plantation. Where do you think she was born at in relation to this house?
I would imagine that the tenant houses were down here in the back somewhere. I know that there used to be one across the road. The chimney for it is still there because it was a bigger house, and it was still inhabited in the late 1960s. I remember it. I remember that there was a man looked after this place for the family that owned it, and he kept a cornfield across the road. It was a beautiful flat cornfield as far as you could see, and there was a house over there and it burned, I believe. But somewhere around here there's probably still foundations of houses back in here. They could have been closer to the cemetery. They could have been across the road. I believe there was a house at some time on that hill across from the cemetery. But the cemetery is what, 500 yards from here?
Yeah.
But this is where Samantha Street would have been born, somewhere up in here. She would have known every square foot of this place. She knew the family. She knew everything about this place. She probably played in and out of these doors of this house, probably on these very steps. She and all of the many others that lived here and worked on this place.